If you love keeping up with the biggest conversations in contemporary literature, or if you get excited every time award season rolls around, be it for movies or books or TV shows or whatever, or if you want a quick, thoughtful first look at the 2025 National Book Award shortlist, if so, then today's video just might be for you. Today, I'll be sharing my initial reactions to this year's finalists and shortlists across the major categories for the National Book Award. Welcome to Spencer Reads Everything. I'm your host, Spencer Duncan, and this channel is all about exploring books across every possible genre, from classics to contemporary fiction to deep dives into history and other forms of nonfiction. My goal is always the same: to help you find your next great read while taking a thoughtful, slightly academic look at the books that are shaping our world. For longtime viewers of this channel, you know that I love a good list, and I absolutely live for award seasons. So, case in point, my Pulitzer Prize finalist and winner videos, which have now a couple playlists, one for the 2024, and I have just finished the one for 2025. For a while now, I've been thinking about creating another prestigious book award playlist. I've considered several of the other major players like the Booker Prize, the National Book Critics Circle Awards, and Women's Prize for Fiction, as well as I looked at some specifics. You have the Nebula Award, the Hugo Award, but there's something especially useful about the National Book Awards that really is the reason that I settled on taking a look at this one. First of all, the diversity, that's really important to me, and the Pulitzer Prizes are announced in the spring. And the Pulitzer Prizes actually have both the announcement of the finalists and the winners at the same time. You don't get a shortlist. At least I'm not aware of the shortlist. Maybe if you're on the inside track, you know the shortlist before they actually announce the winners. I don't know. I'm not on the committee. But the National Book Awards finalists are actually announced in the fall, so I already have that advantage of the Pulitzer Prize being in spring and the National Book Awards being in the fall. And on top of that, the National Book Award does publish in advance its list. Now, the long list usually includes 10 books per category, and I'll name the categories in just a minute. And the short list is when they've cut that in half and they're down to 5. They name the long list, I think, in September. They name the short list in October, and then in mid-November is when they name the winners. They've already named the winners for 2025. I actually got a hold of the list. I mean, if I were a little more tuned in to when it came out, I would have been able to read few of the books before they actually had the winners announced, but that's just not enough time. If I start with the long list, that's only 2 months to read 50 books. There are 5 book categories, and even with the short list, which you get in October, 25 books is doable for me in a month, but I kind of like to take my time, and I have other books I'm reading at the same time, so dropping everything and doing 25 books in a month, it's just a little much. So I am presenting this long after other people have had first reactions. And additionally, I have to confess that I have already started reading many of these books, so I will let that be known when I give you my first reactions. And this is also an introduction to this new playlist. So I will give you a little bit of the history of the National Book Award, my interaction with it, which is pretty limited, and my understanding of it, and then I will give you my reaction to the shortlist. Like I said, it is going to be 5 book categories with 5 books in each of those, and we already know what the winners are, so maybe I'll comment on that. And as usual, once I have done my reviews for all of these books, which is 25 books, I will also rank them, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when I get to my reaction to the videos. But since this is my first one on the National Book Award, let me give a short history of the National Book Awards. The National Book Awards are one of the major pillars of the American literary world. They were first established in 1936 by the American Booksellers Association as a way to highlight the most distinguished books of the year. The awards paused during World War II, but were reestablished in 1950 with a new structure and a renewed focus on celebrating American writers. Since then, the awards have evolved into the form we recognize today, honoring books published in the United States within the award year. That's a major distinction. There's also something that goes for Pulitzer Prize. The Booker Award, on the other hand, is for Great Britain. I am actually not aware of a great international one, which there's obvious reasons why that's hard because of the language that is being published. I did want to look into the Nobel Awards for literature. However, that is not a single work. That's going to be an author's whole corpus that is going to win for literature. And so that's one of the reasons why I have these 2 lists. I certainly would take, if you guys have any good suggestions on international lists. Again, the language will be an issue with that. But there is fortunately a category in the National Book Award that kind of facilitates that. I guess you're technically looking at the translators, but it certainly is bringing some international books into the American literary field. In 1988, the nonprofit National Book Foundation was created to administer the awards and to expand their impact beyond a single annual ceremony. Its mission was simple and is quite ambitious. It is designed to celebrate the best literature in America, but to also broaden its audience and ensure that books continue to have a central place in American culture. The foundation also supports literacy initiatives and brings writers into public conversations across the country. Today, the National Book Awards recognize excellence in 5 categories: fiction, nonfiction, poetry, translated literature, and young people's literature. It has not always been those 5. That has changed over the years. And maybe when I start to review some of these individual books and mention the category, then I'll go into detail about which ones of those categories have been the longest. Each category is judged by a panel of 5 experts: writers, critics, librarians, and booksellers who read hundreds of nominated titles each year. Publishers submit the nominations, judges request additional titles when needed, and the process leads to a long list in September. My experience is 10 books on that long list, although maybe that's changed over time. And then the short list in October, which is 5 books per category, and then the winners are announced every November, as I already stated. Over time, the awards have seen moments of expansion, sometimes some contraction, and in some cases some reinvention, but they've remained a consistent marker of literary achievement. Notably, in 2024, they joined with the Pulitzer Prizes in opening eligibility to non-US citizens, acknowledging the increasingly global interconnectedness of American literary culture. Alongside the main awards, the foundation also presents 2 lifetime honors each year. You have the Medal of Distinguished Contribution to American Letters and the Literarian Award for Outstanding Service to the American literary community. These awards highlight individuals whose careers have significantly shaped the literary landscape. For example, the 2025 medalist is George Saunders, adding his name to an impressive lineage that includes Toni Morrison, Ursula Le Guin, and Robert Caro, and many, many others. So that is a brief history of the National Book Award, which brings us to the actual finalists and winners. I don't know if I wrote down who the winner of each of the categories are, but maybe I'll comment on it when I make individual videos for each of these books as I review them. But taking a look, oh, I should also say that I am just reading the description straight from the National Book Awards website. That is sufficient for me. Like I said, some of these I've already read, some I'm in the middle of reading, and the intention is to read all of them. But I'm just going to give you what was said about them here and let you know my initial reactions to them, and then we'll go from there. So the first book in the fiction category is by Rabih Alameddine, which is the true story of Raja the Gullible, parentheses, and his mother. And apparently this tells the tale of a Lebanese family across 6 decades, from the Lebanese Civil War to the COVID-19 pandemic. It is presumably told with humor and heartbreak, and it is set over the course of 1 week in a near future Calcutta devastated by food insecurity and climate change. Wow, that is packing a lot in there. I'm very interested to see exactly how that novel turns out. Then there is Megha Majumdar's novel, A Guardian and a Thief, which asks how far we might be willing to go to protect those who we love. That's all it says. I'll find out more when I get into it, but that certainly is a fascinating premise. Then there is Karen Russell's The Antidote. It is set in a fictional Dust Bowl era Nebraska town on the brink of collapse, bracing against the forces of the Great Depression and the community's violent histories with indigenous people and the land. That sounds interesting. I think there's been a fair amount of work, I think of stuff like Grapes of Wrath, that at least deals with the Dust Bowl, and in this case it's taking a very different look. So I'm certainly curious about that novel. Then there's Ethan Rutherford's Seafaring Saga, North Sun, or The Voyage of the Whale Ship Esther. And it follows a ragtag crew embarking on a rescue mission and whaling journey that urges the cast of characters to scrutinize their own choices. This one I've already started, and it is interesting. A matter of fact, the author says from the get-go that this is a novel, but he is basing it off of a lot of research that he has done about whaling and just the challenges and just how incredibly dangerous it was. And there's even a specific whale ship that he follows and uses at least parts of that story to tell this story. And it's relatively short, and I look forward to finishing it. Then you have Palaver by Brian Washington, and there is an unnamed narrator who is unceremoniously reunited with his estranged mother in Tokyo, and together they revisit memories that span decades and borders, compelling them to understand and ultimately forgive one another. That's interesting. we'll see how that one turns out. Which brings us to the section of nonfiction. Now, I will say here, this is a big divergence from the Pulitzer Prizes. The Pulitzer Prizes have 6 categories, one of which is fiction, one of which is poetry, and then the other 4 are all nonfiction. And in this case, with the National Book Award, you actually have only one category that is straight up nonfiction. And from what I've seen and from what I've read, it's a different type of nonfiction, especially since it kind of blends all 4 of those categories from the Pulitzer Prizes that you have. So you don't have a biography or an autobiography or memoir section. So you will find in this category some examples of autobiography. But then you'll also have some general nonfiction, and I imagine there'll be some histories in here as well. So this is the list. You have, in his debut work of nonfiction, One Day Everyone Will Have Been Against This by Omar El-Akkad, which centers his attention on American and European complicity in the destruction of Gaza and the Palestinian people, arguing that mass apathy towards immense suffering is leading to innumerable fractures across Western societies. I believe this one was the winner, which does not surprise me. It is very apt for the time period, and I'm certainly curious to find out exactly how this book is written, to see my thoughts on it. I reviewed last year a book that was not exactly about the conflict in Gaza, but it was part of the larger conversation of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, actually mostly dealt with the West Bank. I didn't particularly love that book for reasons of its focus, and I'm hoping that this one is slightly better written, but we'll find out. Then you have Julia Ioffe, who returns to Russia nearly 20 years after her family fled the Soviet Union, blending reporting, history, and memoir to illustrate how the story of modern Russia is interwoven with stories of countless Soviet and Russian women in Motherland, a feminist history of modern Russia from revolution to autocracy. That also sounds fascinating. I have not picked that one up yet, but I look forward to reading it. Then you have Yiyun Lee's memoir, Things in Nature Merely Grow, and it contends with the unimaginable loss of her 2 sons by suicide while embracing radical acceptance that both of her children chose death and that she will continue to live despite the abyss in the aftermath. I am in the middle of this one, about halfway through. I am stunned by this one. It is incredible at getting me to reflect on life, on existential realities, and I'm stunned by it. I look forward to making a video for it, although I suspect I will struggle with the words to explain my full feelings on it. Then there's Claudia Rowe, who explores the American foster care system through interviews with current and former foster youth, as well as psychologists, advocates, and judges, and calls for urgent reform in Wards of the State, the long shadow of American foster care. I'm almost done with this one, and it's been an absolutely fascinating read, and I will give you more details about it, but it certainly is full of experiences of individuals, and it has been an interesting read so far. And then you have anthropologist and wildland firefighter Jordan Thomas, who blends ecology, federal forestry, and indigenous history as he narrates a 6-month megafire season in When It All Burns, Fighting Fire in a Transformed World, bringing readers to the front lines of the climate crisis. That sounds interesting. It also reminds me of a book that was nominated for Pulitzer Prize last year as well. And I look forward to reading that and seeing exactly how it compares. Which brings us to poetry. Now, I'm just going to read straight up what's here. I've already read, I think, 3 or 4 of these selections. I love the suggestions for reading poetry. I'm not up to whatever's current in poetry, and so this is a great opportunity. It's actually one of the reasons why I do these, is because it's given me a chance to dig into something that I have no real expertise in, and so I'm just along for the ride for most of these, and that'll kind of be my summary of a lot of these books. But I have certainly enjoyed the ones that I have read so far, and I look forward to reading the rest of them. So here's what we have. Told through the point of view of an ungendered body as it ages, Gabriel Calvo Corresi's collection, The New Economy, explores childhood memories, great loss, and the desire to accept and protect one's own body as is, while simultaneously yearning to have been born in another. That seems to be I don't know if I'd say a recurring theme, but at least a theme that I've seen multiple instances of in these books dealing with transgender identity. Then there is Kathy Lin Che's Becoming Ghost, which recounts her estranged parents' journey to the United States after escaping the Vietnam War as refugees and later being cast as extras in Francis Ford Coppola's Apocalypse Now, a 1979 film about the Vietnam War. in a reclamation that moves Vietnamese voices to the center of their own narrative. I have finished this one. I just finished this one. It is an interesting collection of poems. I loved the poems, but also it is very much telling a story in a way that these collections of poems don't always do. Then there's Tiana Clark's collection Scorched Earth that examines institutional and historical suffering while simultaneously exploring sensuality and embracing radical self-love as a queer Black woman. I just finished this one yesterday or today. Also a very interesting collection and a very powerful collection. Through the 77 autobiographical prose poems in I Do Know Some Things, Richard Sykin writes his way through the aftermath of a stroke, recovering language, memories, and his sense of self in the process. I've also finished this one already, and it is, again, just an intriguing look into an individual's life. The autobiographical elements of it are incredibly powerful, but also him clearly struggling to put things into words. That is the whole point of poetry, is trying to put things into words, put emotions into words that are not always easy to bring out. And so I thought that this was a fascinating collection of poems. Then you have The Intentions of Thunder, Noonan selected poems which cover decades of Patricia Smith's career, featuring new and previously uncollected poems deeply rooted in Black joy, in defiance of the centuries of violence committed against Black people in the United States. I have not picked that one up yet, but I'm certainly looking forward to it. I must say there's no overlap between these five and the ones that I did for the Pulitzer Prize. That was a total collection of 3 poems. I believe that is because we're off by a year. So this is the 2025 National Book Awards for books that were published, I think, in 2025 or within the last year. And the Pulitzer Prize's 2025 awards were for books that were published in 2024. And so the overlap will usually be a year apart. That being said, I did go back and take a look, and it appeared as though there's not always a lot of overlap. Sometimes there is, and sometimes there's no overlap at all. Which brings us to the translated literature. Now, I could have probably done a little more research because I'm not entirely sure what the process for all of this is. I'm assuming, since the rest of the awards are for books published in the United States, that is what this is. These are books that are translated in their translated form in the United States. That's my guess. I should probably look a little more into that, but I am excited to dig into some of these because this isn't something that you see with the Pulitzer Prizes. I do know that there's plenty of awards for quality translations, but again, those are their own specific awards, and so I was excited to just dig into some of these. You have translated from the Danish by Sophia Hersey Smith and Jennifer Russell, the 3rd installment of Solveig Ballet's 7-part series on the calculation of volume book 3. If that's confusing, the title does make it a bit strange. I have already read the first book in this collection, and so I will need to read the second one and the third one. Read the second one to get to this third one so that I can give my reaction to this one. So this will probably be the last one that I can finally review. But this is a book that offers readers a profound meditation on loneliness and the power of connection when protagonist Tara Selter learns that she is no longer alone in her endless November day. I don't know entirely what all that means. Having read the first book, the protagonist, Tara Selter, is stuck in some November day, and kind of like a Groundhog's Day, but it seems to be far less entertaining and much more reflective. And so this is a continuation of that. And so I'll get to it when I get to it. Then you have We Are Green and Trembling by Gabriela Cabazon Camara, which is translated from Spanish by Robin Myers, and it is based on the real-life figure Antonio de Erauso, who was raised in a Basque convent and fled to the New World during the Spanish conquest, and examines gender identity, religion, and the intrinsic violence of colonialism. That sounds absolutely fascinating. In Anjet Dange's The Remembered Soldier, translated from Dutch by David McKay, a veteran suffering from amnesia, Noon Merkham, is found without any identifying information after World War I. He is taken home from a psychiatric asylum by a woman who claims that she is his wife, but the two are haunted by unreliable memories and the enduring traumas of war. In the late 1980s, French poet and psychologist Jean Peirce becomes captivated with computers, wondering if this promising invention is capable of analyzing, translating, and creating literature. In Hamid Ismailov's We Computers, a Ghazal novel translated from the Uzbek by Shelley Fairweather Vega. I've already started that one. Also very interesting, and I'm curious to continue with it and to see exactly where it goes. Sad Tiger by Nii Shino, translated from the French by Natasha Lair, blends memoir and literary criticism, chronicling years of sexual abuse at the hands of Shino's stepfather, alongside a close reading of literary works that depict incest and pedophilia by Vladimir Nabokov, Virginia Woolf, Toni Morrison, and others. Well, I've not started that one, and that will definitely be a hard one to read. But anyways, which brings us to the finalist for Young People's Literature, and I love this. This is something that the Pulitzer Prizes definitely don't have, so this is actually one of the reasons that drew me in when I saw that this went a little beyond those typical categories of fiction, nonfiction, poetry. This one added an element that made me much more interested. You have Kyle Lukoff, who blends Jewish mythology and adventure in A World Worth Saving to share the story of a trans teen who sets off on a journey to save his friend, dismantle a conversion therapy program, and use his voice to stand up against bigotry and transphobia. I've read that one, and it is so interesting, and I look forward to doing a review on it. In Amber McBride's novel in verse, The Leaving Room, a keeper named Gospel provides peaceful final moments for recently deceased young people, but is encouraged to push the boundaries of her living room when she falls in love with a fellow keeper. I have also finished that one. That one is a little harder to fully detail right here, so hopefully my review gives a little more insight, but it is an interesting one, and it is well, it's interesting. I'll talk more about that one. Then you have Told Through the Eyes of Orphaned Siblings that become educators to nomadic tribes and along the way resolve to help a Jewish boy hiding from Nazi spies. Daniel Nayari's The Teacher of Nomadland, a World War II story, uncovers a hidden World War II history and highlights the power of cross-cultural understanding. I've read this one. I loved it. I loved it. I think I read it in a day. I mean, look, I have a lot more books to read to say for sure, but I'm confident this is going to be my favorite book from this collection, from all 25 books. You'd be hard pressed to beat this one. It was wonderful. You know, there's a lot of World War II stories out there for a good reason. It affected a lot of people. But this one's just such a different approach, and you know, well, I loved it. I'll have more to say when I make a review for that one as well. Hannah V. Sawyer's novel in verse, Truth Is, follows Truth Bangura, a 17-year-old poet who, after an abortion, finds community and freedom through her slam poetry team, her writing, and her post-graduation dreams. I've also read that one. I really enjoyed that one, although that one was a little harder to get through because of its structure, and there will be an audio version of it in the near future, next 6 months or so. And I probably will read it again to hear the author actually do it in verse. Then you have Ibi Zeboi's novel in verse, Eskin, or Skin, the S is in parentheses, which explores self-discovery, immigration, and colorism through the perspectives of Marisol, the 15-year-old daughter of a Sucuyant, which is like a Caribbean mystic or witch, or shape-shifting, skin-shedding witch is what it says, and Genevieve, the 17-year-old daughter of a college professor suffering from an unbearable skin condition. I've read this one. It is an interesting book that I enjoyed, have lots of thoughts on, and we'll get to that one. So that's all of them. That's all 25 of the books. I'm not sure how many I've already read. Quite a few of them I got through pretty quickly. The books for youth and the poetry, I think I've already tackled maybe half of those ones already. But there is a lot to discover. That's why I do this. That's why I'm excited for this. Hopefully, I enjoy doing this as much as the Pulitzer Prizes. Hopefully, there are books that both challenge me, which is one of the reasons I do it. There are the books that give me insight into a whole sense of the literary world that I have no real connection to, like poetry. And then hopefully there are books that I love that just were unexpected surprise. I would say at the moment that the Teacher of Nomadland would be that one. So, with that being said, who is this for? Well, this video is for readers who love being part of the bigger literary conversation, especially those who see a word list not as gatekeeping, but as an opportunity to explore new voices and ambitious storytelling. If you enjoy keeping track of major trends in fiction or nonfiction and poetry or translation and young people's literature, I think that the National Book Awards offer a fascinating snapshot of what writers are doing right now and how those works resonate with readers, as well as critics and the broader cultural moment. It's also very much for longtime viewers of this channel who know how much I love a list. If you've followed my Pulitzer Prize videos or my various reading challenges, you know award seasons are when my inner academic and my inner book nerd meet in the middle. These shortlists often help guide my reading for the next year, and if you approach books the same way, using awards as curated recommendations or as invitations to try genres you may not normally pick up, then this video will fit right into your viewing queue. Finally, it's for anyone who simply enjoys seeing how a prestigious institution like the National Book Foundation recognizes excellence and pushes conversations about literature forward. If you find value in that kind of spotlight, then this is absolutely for you. Who is this not for? Well, this video is probably not for readers who don't find much value in literary awards or who prefer to select books entirely on their own terms without paying attention to short lists, long lists, or critical conversations. If you're someone who feels that awards can overlook popular genres or prioritize certain kinds of writing over others or simply reflect the taste of a small group of judges, which it very much can, but I also still like to be aware of what's going on. I don't blame you if that is not particularly what you're interested in, but if you are curious about finding out more books that you may or may not like and discovering that there is a whole world out there that you are going to be absolutely engaged with in a way that you didn't expect, then I think that this playlist may be for you. And if you prefer fast-paced, plot-driven reading and don't usually gravitate towards the kinds of books that tend to get nominated, books that are often experimental, reflective, or stylistically ambitious, this may not be your scene. That doesn't make the books bad, it just means the award ecosystem isn't aimed at your reading priorities, and that's okay. The National Book Awards always gives us a fascinating glimpse into the kinds of stories, ideas, and creative risks that are shaping American literature in a given year. Even at the level of first impressions, these shortlists highlight just how wide the range of contemporary writing has become and how much room there is for new voices, as well as new forms and new ways of telling stories. For me, this is part of the fun of following award seasons. It's a chance to broaden my reading, discover books I might not have picked up on my own, and to see how different genres are evolving. As I read through these finalists in the coming months, I'll share deeper reviews and more refined thoughts, but for now, I'm simply excited to jump in. Whether you follow the National Book Awards every year, or you're just starting to dip your toe into award-driven reading, I hope this first look helps you see what makes these lists worth paying attention to. As always, I'd love to know what you're thinking. What are your thoughts on any of these books that you have read or are curious about reading or refuse to read for one reason or another? Please let me know what you're thinking in the comments. Of course, while you're here, please first check out this playlist. Well, some of these books will start showing up in this playlist or any of my other videos I cover widely. If you're not interested in these types of awards, then probably don't check out my Pulitzer Prize playlist, but if you are, go check out my Pulitzer Prize playlist. If you're interested in something else, I probably have videos that fit right into your area of interest. And if you're enjoying this video or any of my videos, please share them. The more people that know about my channel, the more videos I can make. And don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on those notifications, and until next time, keep those pages turning.